Helen here with Eyes on the Game here at Las Vegas Sports Network, being joined by the legend himself, Mr. Randy Couture. Now, I know you guys held a press conference today about the PFL coming to Las Vegas for the first time next month. What do you think about it?
Well, I'm excited. I get to sleep in my own bed. I think it's awesome that they're coming here. I mean, in many ways, this has become the fight capital of the world. And so to have the organization, to have the brand be here for their playoffs, which are pretty important, I think is awesome. It's great.
Yeah, not only are the playoffs important, but there's something significant about it. They all fight twice, right, in one day. You've done that yourself back in 1997. So what do you think about this playoff format?
Well, it does pose some interesting problems for the athletes, and that's kind of been the fun part of it, is seeing how each guy focuses on those issues, having to turn around. That some guys want to turn around right away because they're warm and they're ready to go. Other guys are like, oh man, I hope I get like an hour and a half before my next fight. So there are different approaches to solving the problem. Fighting two guys in the same night has been really intriguing.
But what about the partnership with your GI Foundation?
It's been a big thing for the PFL. Whatever city we go to, they pick a foundation that they want to get behind, that they want to support. And our motto with the PFL is, what do you fight for? And so fortunately for me and my foundation, they're coming here to Vegas, and they chose, since I'm connected to the organization, to get behind my foundation for wounded veterans. I've been running this 501c3, the Extreme Couture GI Foundation, for about 12 years now. So really happy to be teamed up with the PFL to be able to get some exposure and with the fans and the MMA base and all the people that are going to be tuning in here in Las Vegas for the PFL quarterfinals and semifinals.
Just right around the corner, but I just mentioned your pro debut, May 30th, 1997. Yeah. When you kind of reflect and look at the evolution and progression of where MMA was and where it is today, what has surprised you the most about it?
Well, I'll give you an idea of the stark contrast between that show in Augusta, Georgia on that May. I mean, we did the weigh-ins in the lobby at the Holiday Inn in Augusta, and the fights were at the Civic Center. That was the first time I had my opportunity to see the two guys that I was going to be fighting, potentially the two guys I was going to be fighting. It was a tournament format. So, I had no time to study film or to kind of do what most of our modern mixed martial artists are doing now, is, strategizing, figuring out where strengths and weaknesses are, how they match up, where they fit together, and how to win those fights. So it was surreal for me. These guys were both huge. I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Obviously it went well, and it became a comfortable, confident, place for me. But that first time, I wasn't sure what I'd gotten myself into, for sure.
But what do you think about where MMA is at today?
Obviously, it's become a global phenomenon. I think we have 16 countries represented in the PFL in this second season. There are fights all over the world now. I think it's become the combative sport for this generation. And I think previous generations, I think boxing was in a lot of ways the combative sport. So I think there's been a little bit of a changing of the guard. And obviously good for me. I was a professional fighter for a while, so, and kind of part of that transition period. So they're holding these fights in arenas that are selling out, 20 plus thousand people. Even the weigh-ins, you're getting 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people showing up just for the weigh-ins. So pretty remarkable transition. There was a time where we were worried the sport might die. There was a big backlash politically with guys like Senator McCain and others that were kind of speaking out against the sport. We ran towards that regulation, ran towards unified rules and making people understand who we were, that we weren't crazy, we weren't criminals or thugs. We were martial artists. This is what we spent our whole lives training to do. So it's been a big shift, and it's been fun to be a part of that, fun to see that, fun to see, I have obviously a gym here in Extreme Couture MMA, and we have, 40 plus fighters in there every week, grinding it out, trying to find their way into those ranks and to be a champion.
Now, you just mentioned boxing. I know back in 2010, you had that fight against former champion boxer James Toney in MMA. I've spoken to several MMA fighters who are interested in crossing over into boxing. And of course, we've seen Mayweather, McGregor. What do you think about, fighters crossing over into different sports?
Well, there's two things that are going on there. First of all, boxing and MMA are completely different things. Obviously, there's a part of boxing that is what we do in mixed martial arts. There's just a lot of other layers to that onion in MMA, a lot of other ways that styles match up and you can win or lose fights, where boxing is solely, striking, stand-up. I think the way the sports are promoted is different too. Boxing sanctioning bodies are a separate entity controlled by commissions, like the Nevada State Athletic Commission. They have their own specific criteria to establish those rankings and create titles in those sanctioning bodies. Promoters have stables of fighters. They want to get those fighters into those rankings and into those fights because that's where the money is, that exposure for their fighters in those sanctioning bodies. In MMA, the sanctioning body and the promoter are the same guy. They're setting their rankings, they're setting those titles, and they're holding these stable of fighters' feet to the fire to basically, if you want to be ranked and you want to fight for my title, you're going to sign this contract, no matter what that contract has in it. And it's really kind of one of the travesties that's kind of going on in the sport of MMA right now. And we're working as fighters to change that a little bit, create some transparency, level the playing field, get our fair share. And I think that's one of the things I love about this PFL format. It's a meritocracy. You have to win. You can talk smack and do all other stuff if you want, but it's not going to get you anywhere. Unless you go out and win fights and progress in the regular season and on to the postseason, you're not going to get a shot at that title shit and that title money. So I really, really kind of like that in the PFL and the way they're doing it. It's a little bit different than anybody else has done it in the sport. But I still think in the sport of MMA, we have some work to do, unifying ourselves as fighting, educating ourselves as fighters, what the system is, coming together. Without us, there is no show. So I think we have some leverage there if we join forces and we figure out how to get it, level the playing field a little bit.
But you mentioned ranking systems. Can you kind of elaborate on your thoughts about that?
I think the rankings in most of the other organizations are being manipulated. Whatever makes good business sense and is going to sell pay-per-views and tickets is really all they care about. And so why even have a ranking system? Just make the fights you want to fight, you want to see happen. It doesn't make any sense. It's kind of it's almost a WWE model that's being used in a lot of the other organizations in MMA right now. And it's about who does the best publicity stunts and who talks the most smack. And it's not necessarily about who goes out and really performs and wins fights. And I think that's not prize fighting. That's not what prize fighting is. So I'd like to see us get more to that meritocracy. You beat this guy, you move up in the rankings. If that guy won't fight, that guy won't fight. Then maybe you get to jump and get a shot at that title because you're the next guy in line that was willing to fight. Yeah. And I think that's the way it should be. That's a true sports concept and how prize fighting was meant to be.
Who's your favorite fighter to watch today?
Gosh, there's so many amazing guys out there. I'm a big fan of Michael Chandler. I've been really having a lot of fun watching Lance Palmer compete. Ray Cooper Jr. has been on the tear and just brings a very specific ferocity. Our returning champ, Magomed Kirimov, has been really interesting. And all these Dagestani fighters like Khabib and so many others that come from that part of the world that really have amazing skill sets that they bring to the cage. They're really fun to watch and see their approach.
Do you think Khabib is one of the best fighters today, or the best?
I think pound for pound, arguably one of the best fighters in the sport right now, for sure. He's got everything firing. I mean, his submission game's great. He's developing a very, very strong striking game. He brings a very tenacious attitude, and he's literally like a pit bull on a chew toy. He's not letting that go. So I like watching him fight. And there's some similarities in the way he likes to fight and the way I like to fight. So that's fun for me too.
But you say one of, so who would be a few others?
Gosh, well, I mean, the guys I mentioned already are all fun to watch. And that's, I think, the cool thing about mixed martial arts. Everybody kind of has a different flavor, different backgrounds. They all come into play. How those match up are, I think, one of the things that make mixed martial arts so intriguing to watch.
Absolutely. And lastly, what would you like to tell all the fans who will be tuning in to the PFL playoffs and attending here in Las Vegas?
Yeah, we're here the 11th, the 17th, the 31st at Mandalay Bay for our quarterfinal, semifinal playoff matches. You can find us on ESPN Plus or ESPN2 if you can't actually come to Vegas and watch the fights, but there's going to be some amazing fights.
And any upcoming movies?
was supposed to be working on Expendables 4 this fall, but because of Jason Statham's schedule, they pushed that to next spring sometime. I've got one out on Netflix now called The Hard Way. I also have a D-Day movie that Chuck Liddell and I both play parts in that's out, just came out last week, playing a small role in a Billy Zane movie next week. So it's, ongoing challenge. One of the things, it keeps me hopping and constantly out trying to find new roles and new films to be a part of.